Before I start this video, I would like to thank Balmer for allowing me to interview him for this video, and also for you guys, my community, my viewers, all the people that comment. It really motivates me to do the things that I do, archive skate, look into all things skate, as you guys know, and without you guys this never would have happened, in all honesty. So I appreciate you guys, I appreciate the community, much love. I really appreciate you letting me interview you, honestly, for this video. It really means a lot. There's a lot of questions out there for so many people, and especially the history of skate, and even for that game to come back, so I do really appreciate it.
And I gotta say, I gotta appreciate this too, because we were people 20 years ago working in secret inside EA on a video game, and to be talking about it and like have its remake coming or the new modern version of it, it's amazing.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's such a full circle moment, actually. No pun intended, but yeah. First, what's your origins before skate?
Well, grew up skateboarding. I kind of had this perspective on building things and organizing things. So I got into running skateboard contests, big one, Slam City Jam, kind of into the 90s. I ran 7 years, I think, of running that contest. Arguably the biggest in the world at the time, but it did reach its end. I started a company with a friend that thrives today called New Line Skate Parks. So I was like in the skateboard world doing as much as I could there. And good friend and good people over at EA wanted to make a skateboard game, and a journey started.
I know, like, Slam City Jam is like such a it was a very big thing back in the 90s, honestly, and then in the 2000s as well, with it being introduced into like other games. How did that come about with Grind Session and also Thug?
Yeah, it was my kind of overlap. And Cuz and I, because Chris, but Cuz, as everyone knows him in the skate world, worked together on Slam City Jam. So like longtime friends, met from the skate parks. And so we did get a moment where we got to be Slam City Jam was in Grind Session, which came out after Tony Hawk 1, and kind of got drowned out because at the time it was dropping and it was better. It was the next skateboard game, a little better. They also dropped, I think, the demo level for Tony Hawk 2 and all the secret codes, and they
Yeah.
just got drowned out, and Tony became the game. But we were in Grind Session, which was by Sony. And then years later, for Tony Hawk Underground, as they moved into that story mode, part of it was coming to Vancouver and then going to Slam City Jam. So got to put our course pretty close, a Tony Hawk style version of it, but to put our course into the game and help them bring Vancouver into the game. And briefly, my character's in there and my name's mentioned. And that was a very cool moment. Like to be in a game was very cool.
So with that being like the origin of, in a sense, of your introduction to video games and you being part of video games, what led to the creation of Skate?
It's always a longer story behind the scenes. I do remember a moment when I think Tony Hawk 4 came out and Grand Theft Auto 3, that Chris and I, because we wrote our little one pager of the game we wanted. We weren't working with any game companies. We had no aspirations for it. We just kind of wrote down our idea. Did get a call from a friend at EA, said they were doing a skateboarding game with Criterion over in the UK, and they needed some consultants. So we signed on and were consultants on Skate or Die, which there's a few little pieces out there that Criterion worked on a version of Skate or Die. It didn't get out the door. Um, After that, I ended up getting a job offer to work at EA and decided to take the leap. And over the next year and a half, we sort of worked our way towards building up the idea for Skate, with a couple internal attempts. And my sort of introduction to making video games was helping finish SSX3.
SSX is also such a crazy, crazy game. One of my favorites, like one of the biggest games of my childhood besides Skate. As Skate's like, honestly, it's actually just changed my life. So I got to thank you for that, actually, for doing that.
Well, that's changed your life. Well, it changed my life. And so that's awesome.
Yeah, my first introduction to skateboarding. My friend would skate, and I'd go to his house. He's playing the demo of Skate 1, and I don't know. I got really addicted, and then since that day,
Right.
I'm still playing. I'm still there.
That's so good. Well, I think there was a place where as we got the chance to dream of skate and I moved downtown to Blackbox. So it was me by myself kind of reporting and working on the concept. Uh, then Chris joined me, so Cuz joined me. So there's two of us down there working on the concept. And we got a green light, which got us to meeting Scott Blackwood and his little team. And then we went from two of us to 12 of us. And that's when we started making the demos and started to see some of the stuff that's out there. So Scott Blackwood was in super early, like, essentially person three.
Oh, wow.
Uh, Chris and I in there right at the start, kind of getting the idea. And the big idea for us was this thing of this is kind of we're trying to create the third generation of skateboard games. In the 80s it was 720 and Skate or Die. And then like, there's Tony Hawk, but Thrasher first came out, then the Tony Hawk games, Grind Session, a lot of variations on that style of skateboarding. And we're like, okay, how do you feel skateboarding? What's the next type of game? And getting to an open world space, just like changing what that style of game could be.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So was it in a sense like, how do we make this more into the core of skateboarding rather than making everything so arcadey? Was it any way like that?
Well, we wanted to make the skaters game,
Yeah.
and like mad respect, thought there would always be room for the Tony Hawk game and hopefully ours to sneak in and have a space. We had EA excited about making it, so we had to keep them excited, like, and so we had this rare opportunity that like EA wants to make it. What is this thing going to be? And there was
Yeah.
that opportunity to make kind of that, bring it down a level, but still the challenge of how do you make kind of believable skateboarding fun? Because it's awesome to grind telephone wires. But there's a certain piece where we had to bring it down, rework the whole flow of controls and physics and animation so they look good together. And like just how do we get that feel just right was kind of one of the core for us. And then we'd be like, you're a skater in a city and all the fun that comes with skating in a city. And oh yeah, it needs progression in a story because it's a video game. But in the end, this thing should live on as just like the toy of being a skater in a city.
Right.
Yeah.
You mentioned controls, and I gotta ask, who came up with the flick system? If you can share that.
Uh, oh no, I know the moment. And it was probably a 3-month effort. And there was a version of controls that we did with Skate or Die because they were getting off the board then and some early thoughts. And we moved we moved obstacles and stuff. We moved dumpsters back in the Skate or Die attempts. Um, and then it was really like, how do we bring skateboarding into a new space? One of the inspirations was what had happened to golf games. And so like it used to be Mario Golf, like tap, tap, tap.
Oh yeah.
And it was a little timing game. And then for Tiger Woods, it was swing the stick. And it was just like, that just feels like hitting something. So there's little seeds of like, how do we use the sticks? But a lot of concern of how do you make it all fit together? And watching skate videos, sitting staring at a black screen just all the time with a controller in my hand. And there was one moment when it just all sort of fit. It was just like pulled back, snap, kick flips, shove its, nollies, like just, and then also, and that's how I'm going to nose grind. And that's how I'm going to nose blunt. That's how I'm going to tail slide. Like it just kind of, the board control showed up as kind of this, it was solved.
Yeah.
So, and then the interesting journey of like, how do you get in all the grabs and trying to like hang on to this idea of like two hands, 2 feet, and just can we blend it all from there? So that was kind of it, getting it together on the stick and then figuring out how to, 2 hands, 2 feet. Can that get us everything we need to? Yeah.
Honestly, that control scheme is like one of the most addicting things about the game. Like just casually skating and just doing kick flips or whatever, and you can really understand how tricks work because of the rotation. That was how I learned. I don't know. I don't skate, but that's how I understood how a trick is and how I knew what it was called because of the movement on the joystick. It's kind of weird
Yeah.
that that's the way, but that's the way.
Yeah. And another piece that comes into that was we no longer had stat bars. Like so
Right.
Tony Hawk games, as you got better stats and your tricks got better. And we kind of wanted to shift all the control to the controls to the player. So I could show up at somebody's house and I can snap a 3 flip, even
Oh
if he
yeah.
can't. It's not about stats. It was truly about skill. So it was just, and I think it was a great time. EA was like looking for control-based stuff. They were looking for like ownable IP, though people pitched all sort of weird IP at it in the early stages. Of course, like it should be X Games skateboarding, or it was always kind of like put a name on it, partner, and we just kind of like, no, skateboarding's bigger than the other name, so let's just go after it and hang on to it. But so
Yeah.
EA was looking for like their own IP. They wanted to compete with the Tony Hawk games, and they were really into kind of the stick control. So it was a really like perfect time for Skate to slide in there.
I can't imagine it being called X Games. That's so funny. But I'm happy it's called Skate. I remember you said because we spoke previously. You mentioned that it was called Skater, and there was another name. Completely forgot that name, but I've been really stuck on it.
We did have an internal prototype and game that was called Concrete.
Right.
That the teams were needed on other projects. They ended up doing back to SSX, focusing on another SSX, SSX4, SSX on tour. I think became kind of that where the team was needed.
Yeah.
So we folded down again. I moved studios and sort of built up the skateboarding concept there. First pitch, I'm guessing this is where we finally got it down to that one pager that we sort of, okay, it's time to meet Scott. It's time to expand the team. It was called Skater, and it was really kind of about being a skateboarder in the city. When I look back at some of that stuff, a lot of like features that we wanted to be in there and kind of that like anarchist sort of skater attitude made it into Skate 2.
Oh
So
yeah.
for skate, we really had to get the skating right. So we had less features, less tricks, couldn't walk. We focused all our kind of gameplay energy on just the skating. And then Skate 2, we kind of got to where I think Skater always hoped to be.
That makes a lot of sense, to be honest. As to you wanted to make sure that it really covers how skateboarding works and the core elements of skateboarding. Then the other stuff can be focused on later if the first game does well. Well, it worked. That's it. I gotta say, it worked.
It's a mix. Like it was really hard. Like the system of these new type of controls, this new type of physics, the animations to get rid of the popping and the magnets that were sort of the basis of skateboarding games.
Yeah.
And in a streaming world, like it was a lot of work to get it there. And so we had to decide what we weren't doing. And we kind of spread what we always dreamed of doing over 3 games and kind of hoped we would get to make a trilogy. But our first one was to just like get skating right, you know, add to it. Um, so we could become the skaters game as much as possible because we wanted to get it right.
Was the first game gonna be bigger than it actually was? If you were to make, I know there's 3 games, but was the first game gonna be something a lot bigger than what was shipped out?
I wouldn't say so. I think the biggest shift we did was deciding not to get off the board.
Right.
Was just to like let's not even learn to walk. Running, it's an arbitrary world. There's skate parks, there's ramps, there's rails, there's like just all these things you can skate. And do we really have to have a character that's gonna walk at the same level? Because that was kind of it. We didn't want to have this like really cheap walking physics when we had this great skateboarding physics. So we really just kind of like that was probably the biggest thing that I recall, maybe because I'm involved in that decision of just
Yeah.
like, what? He's just gonna skate. We'll walk next time.
I also remember because I do have a lot of concept art that I found this concept art for Skate 1 and the map just seemed a lot bigger and it seemed like a lot of elements of Skate 1, a lot of Skate 2 and Skate 3 were just put into this one map. But I was like, I don't know, it would have been crazy to even experience a world that big.
Yeah. Well, there was times when it was kind of like almost photo collages. Like we were trying to quickly get ideas. Like, is this a waterfront city? Is it on the side of a mountain? Is it on its own island? We were kind of quickly exploring what's the shape of this place. And while we're kind of designing our way up from the bottom, we're also kind of working at the bigger scales of what's in this city. So I know there was kind of probably a lot of variations. Like I think one of the skate decks out there shows a globe
Oh
of
yeah.
just like a city wrapped around a globe. We're like, we could do that. it could be an endless loop, could be a sphere that you're just skating around in any direction you want to. But no, we ended up on very much like San Vanalona, our sort of our version of a dream skate city, complete with good spots and bad spots and awkward spots. And yeah,
I always wondered what that deck was. What was the history behind the deck? But now I know because I was always wondering. It was like it's round. There's a bunch of buildings. There's a hand below it, and I never understood what the meaning of it was. But now I get it.
I think that was a piece of concept art. The hand was added as kind of part of making it a deck, but I think it came from a piece of random concept art.
Yeah, I did want to go over the logo as well because the logo changed a lot over time, and there was the star, the asterisk, and now there's the arrow, the orange arrow, and it seemed like Skate went through a bunch of different colors as well, like blue, yellow.
Yeah, I wasn't very involved in that. I think kind of getting to that purity of skate period. I do know that we couldn't get the name Skater. And we tried. So that was the name of the game, Skater. But it came back that was Tony Hawk Pro Skater was too close. But we could get Skate. So that was kind of the evolution of the name happened. But of course, now it's a call to action. Like, let's go skate. So that's kind of where we landed with the period at the end to kind of like almost a call.
There was some other stuff as well in terms of when did Skate actually begin production? Because there's early concepts of 2005, and then you did mention that you and Cuz came up with ideas as well. You were coming up with concepts, and I guess that's probably when it began. But when did like everything really start going?
Um, that it's 20 years ago.
Yeah,
So thinking of the timeline of it, but they all kind of connect. Like, you know, consulting on Skate or Die 2002. Um, you know, moving into SSX3 and Thug was 2003. By 2005, I think we in the summer we probably pitched Skater enough, not like a big pitch, but enough that it was like, okay, we got to move this forward. We got to get more people involved.
yeah,
And you need an executive producer. I'm a new guy. I'm not from the game industry. I came from skateboarding, and Chris came with me. Cuz came with me. Uh, and so we needed an executive producer, like somebody at EA who could actually run the team to make this game that we dreamed of. And so Scott joined with his team. We kind of did a reset. We made sure everyone's, was involved on where we were going to go, and started building kind of that early prototype, which we truly started from the skateboard and the trucks, and then getting that right, and then getting the skater on top and teaching the skater to do tricks. And, we truly did build our own game from the ground up.
I also heard that you guys took a lot of influences from like real life. I know there's a lot of spots in the game that seem to be like from places in Vancouver and so on, but I heard in very early builds the game had Brooklyn banks. Is was that ever considered for the final game, or do you know much on this?
Oh, I'm sure it was there, modeled or at some point. Um, it was a full world building team, right?
Yeah,
So there's people responsible for neighborhoods, people who were doing the buildings, people who were building the skate parks and building the connecting lines in between. Like it was, and we wanted it to be a bit random. Like there was definitely like curated, like we're building this style of park here or that, but in between it had to be a bit of a not built to skate, so that you had to find your spots, and big enough that there is kind of nooks and crannies that were never really tuned for skating. You just kind of make them work,
yeah,
and it's kind of intentional. Um, I just don't recall skating the Brooklyn Banks, but I'm sure we did. Like over the course of Skate One, close to 2 years of development from scratch.
yeah.
Um, there was a lot of prototypes and tests and skate parks that were made, and kind of combined them together to get towards the end. We were trying to build kind of our own city. Um, but there was like the Hubba hideout, like there was elements mixed into the city. But we were trying to really build our own city as much as possible, instead of being like, wait, that's not exactly like the Hubba hideout.
Yeah. In Skate 2, there's this the hidden Snakeway place.
Yep.
I'm pretty sure that's in Vancouver as well. I
Uh, the one
think
up
it's
on the
like
mountain.
it's like a snake thing. I don't know,
Yeah.
and there's a ball in the end. That's
This is a
literally it. Yeah.
well, this one's Sealand. This was carved by my brother. It's just like a model of one of my favorite skate parks. And
Right.
up in Whistler is the kind of the one that's off in the woods,
Yeah.
up on the mountains. Yeah, that was kind of modeled on the Whistler skate park. Very similar. There were parks built in the 70s, very flowy snake runs, before people could ollie really, before people were doing the stuff we do in them now. Uh, yeah, that's kind of what's been in our neighborhood a lot. So we put it in the game. There's a lot of stuff from our world or from the team's world that makes it into these games.
Yeah. I love
Yeah.
that, honestly. I just love that the fact that this game's like really built by skaters, and then it's more of like an introduction to skating. And it's more like your love letter to skating. That's how I feel like the game really is.
At one point we knew that because I'd seen it with the Tony Hawk games, that what we were doing would also be an intro to the culture,
Yeah.
intro to skateboarding for many people. Like just we're in a kind of using a mainstream medium to do something for skateboarding. And so it had to be from the skateboarders side, like authentic to them. And of course, I wanted a game that as I got older, I could still ride around and do kick flips and like just enjoy the feeling. But then also knowing maybe it's someone like yourself that's going to start playing the game and get introduced to the feeling and introduced to the vibes of what we're going through and what's cool about skateboarding.
It's yeah, it's honestly changed my life.
Now you said that before, and really that's because it led you to some of this work and kind of doing the videos.
Um, well, yeah, because I never did video editing before, but because of the advanced camera in Skate 2, and then later in Skate 3, it's like really introduced me to how to do videos, do video editing, kind of cut content and make montages. And then it got me into like IRL skateboarding where because I know it's a crazy topic to talk about, but ice cream, TK with
Yeah,
TK, I watched a lot of ice cream. I loved ice
yeah,
cream, and then I just got so addicted to it. And
yeah.
then this like grunge street skating style of Skate 2 overall is just like really pushed me into like wanting to edit, wanting to make videos, being really obsessed with this whole grunge style, you know, being you.
Yeah, that's really interesting. So my experience, of course, we wanted to have this like video capability and not something you had to press record on, something that was that instant replay, you
Yeah,
know. And that was a big piece. I think we borrowed some of the tech from like what the NHL games had done on just like having instant replays of sporting events. Um, and then to make sure you could turn it into a video. Now, most people use a capture card or film, right? But one of the things we wanted then was how can you send it to a friend? How is this like, this is skate footage. How can I post it somewhere? And most games, well, all games, you could watch replays or hook up a capture card, but none of them could send a video. And so that was one of the big things we also focused on for Skate was how do we get a video off the console, and
yeah.
that hadn't been done at that point. Now every console captures, your phone does it, it's common, but 20 years ago it was something that people were like, I don't know if we can do that. Um, so that was a big feature for us. And then Skate 1, the cameras were pretty basic. For me, that's when I did my one video part that ever got posted. And I think shared it with you.
Yeah.
And and of course share it. It was a fun video moment. But when Skate 2 came out, the controls got more complex. It wasn't about the skating anymore. It was about like picking the right camera angle. And there was as much time to be spent, if not more, in the editing than the skating. And I kind of just went back to skating. Different inspirations.
I found that video really funny actually because I did watch it. You're the first person to make a fake no comply. You know that? I've never seen a fake no comply in my entire life, and I watched that video that you showed. Was it Revenge of the Mango or something? Something mango. I don't know.
Curse of the mango.
Curse of the
Yeah.
Mango, and saw Mongo pushing and then bailing, yeah, and then but your part had this fake no comply, and I was like, this guy's a genius. How has no one ever done this? I've never seen it in my life.
Well, I had the advantage of seeing it at every frame, of all the physics, how it was tuned, where the sensitive parts were. I remember thinking of the moment when you could uh, do the hippie flip. And it was something like I kind of went, wait a minute, like I should be able to kick flip and go over a rail. And had to find there was this one parkade where it was like, I think this is the spot, and took a bunch of tries and finally like got the first hippie flip. And it wasn't
Oh my
planned. It
god.
was something that it was just like theoretically the physics allow us to do this. Um, and other things came out that just kind of like, well, knowing how the physics works is a bit of an advantage.
That was another thing I really wanted to cover, the hippie flips, because there's old footage of hippie flips being hit, and it's like it looks like it's considered, but I guess it was more like, oh, this is the thing we can do. That's fine, let's go with it. But then another
Yep.
thing, a lot of people in the community think about are the Gon's hippie flip. You know the clip of him doing a hippie flip in the intro?
Yep.
People think that is an animation and not gameplay. I don't know if you're able to clear that up or not.
Um, I had to go into Darren's office, his filming room, and land the trick. And I think Cuz and Darren and me were in there, and I was like, this is where I've done it. I've done it over this rail in the parkade. And then I had to do it with Gons to get it in the intro video. So it was very much like I was in the room trying to land that trick so we could get it in the video. Yeah.
You just cleared up a lot. A lot of people have been wondering. I've like had so many like calls with people wondering, is this an animation? Is this real? How did he do this? But at least we know now.
Yep. Well, it's just the gap, right? It's such a physically accurate game that there's just a gap between the feet and the board. And so
Yeah,
the concept is like if I can find the right rail, there is a gap.
that is true. There's now like a lot of people are really obsessed with hippie flips. I did my
Yeah.
first hippie flip at the elementary school actually.
Yeah.
If you know that one, the double kick flip, and they can go right over the rail. The board goes right nicely under.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Nice. Great.
Actually, speaking of locations, uh, was everything in a sense drawn, or if you know about this or not, or was it like modeled digitally, or were things physically created? As in, for the art gallery, I know it was made by clay. I've never seen that before for any game.
Well, Tom, they're one of the concept artists on Skate. Just he creative guy. He was the shotgun that came back with just like truly wild ideas. Things moved, things did all sorts of stuff, and sometimes he came in with like a 3D model because he was like he couldn't quite draw it or he couldn't quite get it across, and he just at home built a little model of it. Um, so it wasn't a common practice. Most stuff was just all digital, but every
Right.
once in a while it was kind of this wild concept like the art gallery that we got a little model of.
There's a lot of things that were removed, and I don't know if you know about. Well, let's go over some of it. One thing was the red sky when bailing. Like so, back in the old builds, when your skater would bail, and there's a footage of you actually talking over this footage, the
Right?
whole screen would just go red. Do you know why this may have been removed?
I don't recall any sort of like drama with it. It reminded me of another story about the name Flickit, but I don't remember any drama around kind of the red in the sky. There was times when like the effect when you're like in the zone and in the line, then you lose that and you wipe out the kind of the color cube, the shifts
Yeah,
were like way over the top. There was times when the sky turned rainbow, like when people were just trying different stuff and the buildings were like, different colors down the street when you were in the zone in like times three. But yeah, so there's a lot of experiments at different times.
yeah,
So yeah, I don't remember any drama around the red. It was probably just a choice at some point.
yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, especially when you would get times three. Now you mentioned it, it does get very vibrant. And was that a choice in the sense of like you're like you said, you get very into the zone, so the whole world is just alive from what the line you're doing?
Yeah. We're trying to like change the feel and the kind of the rhythm of skateboarding. Like as you're playing it and you fall into that, like this feels good. You don't want to, and I know you can play for points and you can get like, frantic with it and like just play the scoring system. But we also want the scoring system to encourage how we want people to play.
Right.
So we want them to do lines. We want them to land a trick. We want to feel that moment and then carry that into the next trick. So you got to keep finding something interesting to do. And then once you're in that zone, we kind of intentionally wanted to like the audio shift slightly, the visuals shift slightly, like you're feeling it. And partly that kind of is subtle and more noticeable when you lose it. when it all kind of like ends, your line ends and you feel the sound change. And it was just kind of like a subtle place of being in the zone without it being like a fail noise.
Another thing, and I don't know if you know about this, but there is Cudmore from SSX3 in Skate, and I don't know if that was intentional for a crossover, because there are crossovers in Skate 3, or if this is just like testing.
I'm sure just testing. Like we did, a lot of people from SSX did end up on the skate franchise. Like it might have been a third of the team had experience in
Oh
SSX.
wow.
We kind of got skate going and they joined us a bit later. So there was a lot of that easy access to different assets. Um, so might have been just kind of an experiment when we were talking about doing different characters like the finger skateboarding and a few other things. Might have, I don't know if we actually got cut, but I do remember Bessie. There was a yeah, kind of a collection of different characters that showed up, and there was definitely people from SSX who had joined us on Skate.
Right. That would have been so weird with a finger skater. That's very like very Tony Hawk. I think that became more
Okay.
like Tony Hawk in Skate 3 where everything just became very a little bit over the top but not too over the top, you know?
Yeah, but there was I think in Skate 3 you can skate as a giant hand,
Oh,
and it might have been Skate 2. There's like a big chunk of meat.
oh yeah. So Skate 2 had Dem Bones, Skate 1
Yeah,
had Dem Bones, Skate 3 had Meat Man, the steak, and and it also had a Dr. Pepper can as a hidden skater. If
right.
you bought like a drink, you could redeem that. A lot of people didn't know about that actually.
Yeah. Have you heard in Skate 2 there's a 3D mode
Oh yeah, yeah, yeah,
called Strange Loops?
yeah, yeah. I've
Yeah,
seen that. Yeah,
yeah. That's when I remember just kind of like someone wanted to do and just like, yeah, let's you do it. And the engineer that did it said he wanted to name it. He wanted to create the cheat code. So Strange Loops was the name chosen by the engineer who put it in.
I've tried that one time actually, a very long time ago, when I first found out about the cheat code around the time Skate 2 released. I do
Yeah.
remember that actually. There are a lot of cheat codes that were removed from the game. There's cheat codes like every single NPC would be a granny, or the skaters will have big heads. But these were later removed before the demo came out, and then obviously in the final game. Do you know much on that?
Well, we knew we wanted to have a lot of fun with Skate, and we kind of had an idea with the physics engine and with all the living world and with the vehicles. There was a lot of fun to be had. But also
Yeah,
at the first one, we had to just be authentic, like because we just wanted to show and put out the right. We're calling it Skate. How do we put out like the right game to become like the skaters game? And we think there's room for the Tony Hawk over the top level. It's arcadey skateboarding, but they came to an interesting place with proving ground. But we ended up head to head, and they're instead of being 6 months apart, so it kind of was like seemed to be like there'd only be one game to win. Um, but yeah, I think it was just kind of an interesting journey of seeing all the pieces, some that fit, some that didn't, some that like were built and then didn't make a cut.
yeah.
Like I said, it was a big team. I think 150 people working on it. So there's lots of things happening in different corners that I don't think anyone knew all the things that were going on.
There's also things with characters as well. I know there's Cuz in the game, and I know Darren's in the game as well, also known as Seb. Were you ever gonna be in the game? And the original characters as well, like Sammy and Freeway and so on, were they real people?
We brought people in, and there is another guy, Seb. His real name's Seb, but Seb shows up as Slappy in the game.
Oh, what? Wow.
Yeah. So there is like that's the characters that and we decided to put in the game like there. Cuz was a personality. At first he was doing the voice, and then in Skate 2 bring him into the game, and he's Cuz.
Yeah,
So like he was just kind of he became a voice of the game and a voice with the community, and he's lifelong skater. Um, been on many of these journeys together, so like he really is kind of the soul of what's going on there, as far as like the skate energy. So he made sense to be in the game, for sure. I don't
yeah,
think it ever came up that I would be, but I'm kind of close to average, so I was like easy to create and create a character. So whenever I was doing kind of interviews and stuff, I'd sort of make my character and put him in a red hoodie because I was wearing a red hoodie, and you know, I didn't really need one made.
Yeah. Just like in that video that you showed me, Curse of the Mango. It looked very much like you, actually. I could tell you try to make yourself.
Yep. That was the dream. Yeah. That was our first. So there's four of us in that, which is, it is myself and Darren and Cuz. Another guy, Lex Luthor is in the video, but Nick Burke. So he was someone else who was early involved in Skate.
Right.
So when Kaz and I are the only two kind of like thinking and working on it, he was working on Need for Speed and
Oh wow.
he wanted to help. And so we actually made with him like a first little teaser video of what skate might look like to get like the low camera, follow camera, because he was a skater, came from skating. I knew him through skateboarding, filming, and stuff like that before I knew him at EA.
Yeah.
So yeah, Nick Burke was another guy early on that helped us sort of build the first concept and pitch that rolled it forward.
Speaking on the camera, you did mention before about how the camera really came about, and it reminds me of another thing. There is kind of a bug in the game that lets the camera follow the board rather than the skater, and I don't know if that was an original like thought or how it really came about, and also with how static the camera is being close to the ground. What was the influence behind that?
Well, if you watch skate videos, the camera's following along. And so like getting a fisheye, and it's part of just making the moment feel maybe a little bigger than it is. Like skaters aren't, cars jumping over gaps or dirt bikes. We're jumping in the game about a meter off the ground or, a couple feet up, few feet off the ground. But we need to make that feel awesome. And
Right.
so letting the camera stay low instead of mostly when you play a video game, the camera moves with the character. So you can't really see how high they're going. So that was a very specific, like, let's keep the camera low. Let's have the skater jump in scene. In Skate 1, sometimes the skater would leave the whole frame,
Yeah.
because we were so intent on like keeping that low shot that sometimes we lost the skater. And there was moments people saying like, you cut off the guy's head. And we're like, but it's not about his head. It's only about what the board's doing and the feet. So yeah, very intentional to kind of stay low, focus on the board, and then have a lot of other feelings in the camera. Like when you go big, it pulls back and kind of changes focus. Um, so you really feel the height, like, oh, I just went pretty big. The camera shifts, so you kind of know that's coming. And then an interesting one was when you were going fast downhill. And so the instinct of usually for cameras in video games is that as the character accelerates, the camera pulls back. So you kind of feel the acceleration. And then you're kind of the camera's following from further behind. Um, but it makes the skater a little smaller. It actually doesn't feel fast. So it was one of our options was either pull back, but instead we decided to push in. And then we had to make the character slightly transparent. So you'll see when you're bombing down hills, as you go faster, the camera actually gets closer. So you can see the board. The top of the character is almost out of frame. The legs go transparent. So you can really feel like the speed wobbles and feel the speed.
Yeah.
So yeah, very intentional.
I was wondering that actually because in Skate 3, I believe the camera goes back out, but in Skate 1, the camera's like really close. And
Yeah.
even to make the skater somewhat like transparent is such a choice that it's a little bit like what was the meaning behind that?
Well, we had to feel the speed.
Yeah.
And that was the goal. And we actually built both cameras. So we had the like as he goes faster, the camera pulls back. You can see cars. It's much easier to navigate when the camera's a little further back and you can kind of dodge cars and stuff. And the trade-off was the close camera. Sometimes you just run into stuff because you couldn't see it coming. Your camera's super low to the ground. So it made it much more intense, uh, kind of harder to play, but we also had to go transparent to make that work. So we had a moment where it was showing Scott, okay, Scott, he was definitely like we pull back because that's what car games did. And we were like, well, I think we got to go the other way. And so we kind of built both and then decided to go to the close-up camera.
Yeah. There's also another thing like the Skate, was there any DLCs planned for the game? The very first game. As I know in Skate 2 there's DLCs. And yeah.
Not that I recall. Like we really, all the framework and back end and servers and like to do DLC and it was also early days. There wasn't a lot of DLC in the market. In my opinion. I don't recall a lot of it being like a big driving feature, but
Yeah,
by Skate 2, we had to look at how we could expand it. And there was more partnerships, there was more parks to do.
yeah.
So yeah, it made sense for Skate 2, and we had the time to make sure the tech was there.
There's a lot of like really cool parts, like the Rob Deerdeck one. That's probably what. Well, actually, that's probably my favorite as well.
Right.
Um, I was actually wondering. I know that it's listed that you've worked on Skate 1 and 2, but did you do any work on Skate 3?
Um, I left just before Alpha on Skate 3.
Right.
So I was kind of the gameplay producer. Started off kind of creative director, but as the team gets bigger, it's kind of okay, here's your focus. So the gameplay production, which was it was the skater's physics, the scoring, the living world. So all kind of the moving elements of the skater that could be dropped anywhere in the city, essentially. So like what's the gameplay that is the skateboarding? Um, and then followed that through, always had kind of this vision of where it could go. And then it was about Alpha on Skate 3. So I didn't finish it. I was there for most of it, but I didn't finish Skate 3. Yeah.
So crazy. There's a lot of weird things in Skate 3, and I don't even know if you can answer this. I don't even know if you know this. There was a mermaid in Skate 3. If you know, just at the end of the pier.
Oh, well, Skate 3 was also like we went core, we did skate as we were supposed to do. We
Right.
got to build the game we kind of wanted in Skate 2, like double the tricks, off board, moving obstacles. Like it was like the toy, the world of skate was there. Skate 3 was, we kind of knew that there wasn't a Skate 4 in the near future. We knew this was kind of the end of the Skate franchise for now. So Skate 3 was, let's jump the shark. People know who we are. Let's just throw it all in there. And that's why, like, very early in the game, you got to jump the shark. You got to jump the shark statue. We were just calling ourselves out and saying, we're jumping the shark. We're putting in all the toys we can. So, cheats and game modes and create a park, and just like, how much can we give to the players so they have as much to play with as possible?
Yeah.
So, that was kind of Skate 3 was like, let's just put as many toys in as we can.
Did you expect people to still be playing Skate after so many years and to even beg for a new game?
I don't know. Like I never thought of it that way. We knew we'd done it after Skate, right? Like, unfortunately, the Tony Hawk franchise sort of spun out and went on to plastic skateboards for a while, sort of chasing the Guitar Hero route or something, and it didn't work. And it was too bad, but we knew we made the game we wanted to. Um, Thought it would be a trilogy, hoping we could achieve that. One of the things that happens with this kind of trilogy is like the first one you get to make is the one the team wants to make because nobody's seen it. We're the only ones who know what we're making. Skate 2, all the fans have seen it. Now we have an audience, so what can we do for them? That was like going after double the tricks. Like what's a worthy Skate 2? And we
Yeah.
had another 2 years to do that. I kind of knew Skate was going to be put away for a while.
Yeah.
Uh, I was looking for kind of what's next for me because I wasn't at EA to work on a rugby game or something else. I was there to do skate, so I kind of looked for what was happening next for me. So, which was sad. Like I didn't finish it with everybody, and Cuz wrote it out. He stayed with the community for a long time. Um, and I'm stoked it's going again. Like, with Darren and Chris, Darren and Cuz, I'm stoked they're right at the core of it, and they've been like just carrying the torch, and they got a chance to do it again. It's awesome.
Yeah. Yeah, I know, I honestly never thought this day would even happen, to be honest, where there's a new game. There's actually a trailer releasing tomorrow. Obviously when this video releases, it'll be in the past. But for us right now, yeah, the trailer's releasing tomorrow, so it's an exciting thing.
Yeah, it's coming, so we'll get some more like, yeah, we'll get a release date, I guess.
Yeah.
Start to see a little bit more what its final form will be. It was always like it should be fun to play. Just flick the stick, flick it was kind of the like if we can get that feeling of skating right, the that was the purpose. So,
Yeah.
yeah.
How was it as well working with Blackbox? And what was your reaction when it closed?
Uh, well, Blackbox, the leaders there invited me down. I'd call out probably Steve Reckschaffner as the guy who was one of the vision behind SSX, but
Yeah.
also the guy who brought me into EA. So Steve Reckschaffner was kind of the main guy it was down at Blackbox and helped me find a home there to work on the concept for Skate. So they gave it space, they gave it room, they gave it the green lights. Need for Speed was doing super well, and we were right downtown in Vancouver. It was the perfect place to like teach people about skateboarding, to take new people on the team out for tours of skate spots. Like we weren't at a campus out in the suburbs. We were, right in the middle of downtown. So Black Box was perfect. And part of why skate got to be what it was because Black Box believed in it and we were in the right place to do it. Too bad, like I think they did an incredible job with Need for Speed. I think that's what led Black Box to be bought by EA. So they were a great studio. Need for Speed ended up shifting to another team over in the UK, and so Black Box no longer had that, and Skate had come to its end of its first trilogy. So they kind of didn't have a big game, so it kind of slowly the brand of Black Box as a studio kind of
Yeah.
faded out. Yeah.
It seems like an exciting place to work as well, with like that DJ booth as well. It's still funny to me that there was a DJ booth in the headquarters. I've never thought that would be a thing.
And this was so a couple images of Black Box where we made Skate. So it was downtown, right on the waterfront in Vancouver. Tall building. EA was the main or the biggest tenant. So the bottom half of the building or more is all lawyers and law offices. And then up at the top is a video game studio. So you get on the elevator, it's guys in suits and guys in hoodies, and the guys in hoodies are the ones going to the top floors. Uh, the top four floors, there was a balcony on the top level. It's the top of the building. That's where there's a big lounge and cafeteria. And every Friday there was beer and cake and a DJ would play. We'd all sing "Happy Birthday" terribly. There was four floors up there, all connected, and there was a spiral staircase between the floors with a bamboo tree 4 stories tall that had to be flown in by helicopter when they created the studio.
Oh my god.
And then Skate was a couple floors down, separated, kind of a secret team working at a separate level.
That literally sounds like a party. It doesn't even sound like you're
Yep.
working.
It was amazing. It was
Yeah.
absolutely amazing. And then to be going to work to talk about the physics of a grind, or how do we line up the trajectories to like lock into nose blunts? Like it was just amazing experience.
Yeah. Do you have any like more stories you could share just working on the game or even just working with Blackbox at all? Or actually even with the pros as well, because there's a lot of pros in the games.
I came from skateboarding, doing events and things like that, so I had some, good connections there. And as we were EA, big corporate giant EA making a skateboarding game, and there was already the Tony Hawk game in the market. It was figuring out how do we partner with the industry? How do we become of value to it and embraced by it and show up right? Like skateboarding can block you out. And we wanted to be like a really important part of it. So the first person we went after, the first person we flew down and meet was Danny Way,
Oh
because
wow.
Danny Way had not been in the Tony Hawk games. There was a little bit of like not into it. He didn't need the money, so he's kind of got the FU money. Like, I don't need it. So you got to convince me. So we went after Danny, and the first guy we got to say yes and believe in what we were doing. And then the next person we wanted was Gons. And so he happened to be coming through on a demo tour, and we arranged for Danny to be there too, and brought Gons into the studio and showed him what we were doing. And once you have Danny Way and Mark Gonzalez in the game, like the other calls were easy.
Yeah.
Like we'd clearly checked off some boxes, so it was starting to be like, who do we want in the game? Who makes sense to build out this team, this range of skating, and not to compete with Tony, right? We didn't want to steal anybody.
You guys did have like a really unique roster, to be honest, including like Rob and Big as well. Normally you just had like Rob Dyrdek, but you had Big Black as well, which I didn't expect. It's kind of it's kind of cool that that was even a thing, and even with the cutscene of him just standing there.
Oh, it was super fun, right? It was just kind of part of it. Starting to
Yeah.
be a bit weird in Skate 2, but still had that kind of fighting chaos that you hope to have in a game, right? You wanted to be breaking off skate stoppers. It feels better. You want to be kind of dodging or knocking down security guards.
Yeah.
Like I think freedom for skateboarding needs a little bit of that friction to fight back against the world, and it makes it a bit more interesting. Probably the pedestrians get in the way a bit too much if you session one spot too long. But but it was fun to kind of build that world that reacted to you and made it more playful and like sketching behind cars, different types of cars. Some will wait for you, some won't,
Yeah.
so it's kind of they had different personalities even as drivers. So it was a very fun world to make.
My favorite thing is probably, honestly, probably the skate stoppers with Mike or the security guards. You know, when you get to the restricted areas and then Mongo Cole's just pushing after you, trying to chase you. I mean, you can call Big
Yeah.
Black, he can knock them out for you.
And
Love
it's an
that.
obvious part of skateboarding, like going to skate downtown. It's an obvious part that you're going to get chased out. There's going to be some conflict. Someone's going to maybe throw a bottle at you. Like it's going to happen. As you're, especially as you're punk teenagers who are getting lippy and just don't care when you're down there. So like it can be part of skate. So it's something you want to include and keep that kind of drama there. I think that's why Skate 2 in some ways like feels a bit richer. There's more pedestrians, there's more traffic, there's more of that kind of a bit of conflict.
Yeah.
So it's a more interesting place to skate.
I personally feel Skate 2 is it's like my favorite skate game of all time. I mean, out of every skateboarding game, I'd probably say it's my favorite. You know, with the grunge, the amazing roster of skaters, all the things you can do, all the personalities, the story, like it was just something completely different. You know, it really captures the 2000s better than I feel like any other game.
Yeah. There was one interesting part that in Skate 2, like moving objects. And of course we had kind of object spawner later, so it was kind of easy to place them anywhere. But in Skate 2, that idea of like if it looks like you can move it, you can move it. So most games up until that point, if there was this idea of movable items, there'd be like a big yellow bar on the side, like you can grab here.
Oh
And
yeah,
we kind of didn't want to have this like language written on the world. So our rule was if it looks movable, it should be movable. If you don't want it to move, then bolt it to the ground, make it look heavy, do something so nobody's over there trying to move a concrete bench.
yeah.
Like just so it was kind of something that we really wanted to find a way to make it just part of the world. Yeah. I think for me, but I think the amazing thing that we got to, and of course, I'm just someone who sits there with the controller and goes, "This would feel sweet," and then talks to the animator and talks to the engineer and helps work it all, bring it all together. Um, Trying to make a game that you flick the stick, the flip happens, you push forward, it lands into a nose grind, it locks in, and there was no video game physics. It didn't have the grind button, which had the magnet to pull it over to the rail.
Yeah.
Uh, so we had to, at the moment of takeoff, we scan ahead and go, is there a rail nearby? And at the moment of takeoff, we give you a little tiny adjustment so you land straight onto that rail. So there is sort of a magnet, but it's at the moment of takeoff that we put it in there. Some of those kind of moments, and then just locking into the grind and just no balance meter, just like enjoy your 2 seconds. If you're in a board slide, you can hold it longer. Like just you did it. I think some of those things were just how we brought those things together. I think is some of the stuff I'm kind of most proud of because it really did. We started out this idea of what's the third generation of skateboarding games going to be. Um, and I think we kind of got there, and we've seen Session and other games kind of pick it up and keep pushing that direction. So I think, yeah, the fact that we got there is really something I'm stoked on.
Yeah. You guys really did start like a huge thing in terms of like simulators. I mean, the game's a bit weird. It's more like you can't call it arcadey, you can't call it simulator. It's more like I don't know. I just call it skateboarding at this point.
Yeah. Um, well, it was intentionally believable. And part of it was, when you ride up to a curb, it wasn't just going to be a magic curb you ride over. It was like you had to ollie. And if you ollied too soon, you ran into it. If you ollied too late, you ran into it. You had to like push and time your ollie and kind of, it was physically kind of representative of how skateboarding works. So it made sense.
Right.
You didn't kind of go like, oh, the video game rules, my balance meter fell off. Like generally in skate, where you screwed up or what you could have done better. And that was kind of, then it feels right. Oh, this makes sense. But we weren't trying to be core simulation. We probably built that first, and then we had speed wobbles, and we could only ollie real heights, and then we pushed it to what I call kind of believable. So skateboarding's crazy enough. Danny Way was jumping the Great Wall of China. Guys had a 4'2" world record ollie height. We kind of like, let's keep it believable. But of course, it's crazy. The first 360 hard flip, I think, was filmed for the game.
Oh wow, that's so
And
crazy.
so maybe this is kind of a way to wrap it up. But one of the things was looking at, okay, here's all the directions of tricks. So there's a kick flip and the heel flip, and there's like the shove it. So shove it plus a kick flips, the vario flip. And then there's the 360 flip and there's the laser flip. And and then 360 inward heel flip and like 360 hard flip. I've never seen anybody do a 360 hard flip. People have now, but at the time I hadn't seen anybody. And we were getting all the pros in to do mocap so we could capture their tricks. Some people were better at different tricks than others. I'd asked a couple people and then asked Chris Cole, you ever done a 360 hard flip? And he said he'd been trying them, but hadn't done one. This is memory, but it's 20 years ago. And that in the mocap suit, he landed his first 360 hard flip.
Oh my
So
god.
we had some mocap to work on to like tighten it up for in game. And but he said we could never show it to anybody because he's in a mocap suit. And and so yeah, I think the first 360 hard flip that I ever saw was for skate.
That's actually crazy. I would love to see like at least footage of that, but that was so long ago, and obviously no, I don't think anyone was recording. But who would have thought it would have been done there?
Somebody's got that stuff. Who knows?
Yeah.
I'm sure it's in the vaults at EA. EA is pretty good at saving everything.
Did they actually save everything? Like, do you think they save like old builds of the game or even like this old reels?
I would assume so. They might be on old like tapes now or something like that, or put
Yeah.
into like hard drives and storage. But my experience there was they kind of saved everything.
That's actually amazing. I thought they kind of burnt everything or got rid of everything. There's a lot of things I've been wondering about and I just couldn't find. Like, I don't know if you know about this. There's there's a build of Skate 3 made just for Jimmy Kimmel, which was like really strange.
With Guillermo.
Yeah.
Yeah, there would have been like a promotional one, like kind of I don't remember if that was just kind of a one character, a special created character. But yeah, that would kind of think it was before it went out, promotional thing. Yeah, it was probably a little bit after my time, but I remember that happening.
Yeah. Yeah, I appreciate you having us. If there's anything you want to promote, anything you want to say about what you're currently doing, just so people know what you're working on or where to find you.
I've always been new liner on Instagram. I don't kind of hide, but I'm also not doing that much. And I'm looking forward to playing skate just like everybody else. Like I love what they're doing and kind of the low level details with like slappies and wall rides, that stuff that just kind of like makes the lower level come together. It's beautiful. It's like it's a next little level. And I know they'll get all the other tricks in. But I'm looking forward to playing skate online in like an open world like that. I think that really connects to like what skate's about.
Well, people have heard it now from one of the original developers, so they can't complain.
It's about the feel, right? But that's my opinion. I'm waiting to play it, just like
Yeah,
many others are.
yeah, that's exactly what I was thinking. Yeah, I really appreciate it.
Appreciate talking to you, Nick.
Thanks.
Yeah.
Again, thanks to all of you who have been supporting me, and also a special thanks to the people that have been submitting questions for this interview. Cypherus, Gavin, Stoke, Fleurs, and Oak Street Lokes, also known as Kelly. Make sure to check out all these guys' channels. They will be in the description below. And always, don't forget to follow my socials.